Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. I am Clayton Sayfie along with Chris Balas and Anthony Broome, coming to you on a Thursday amidst a ice storm, which is actually dying down a little bit here. Now it's going to be a total mess, but spring ball, few practices in, few days in. Michigan basketball plays tonight at Rutgers. We will talk about that game and the Wolverines basketball program. Jim Harbaugh held a press conference this afternoon, so we will kind of start off with some of our takes on what he discussed for about 25, 30, 35 minutes, whatever it was. Very, interesting bunch of different topics that were hit on as Michigan kicks off spring ball. They'll take the week off next week, and then they will come back at it all the way through the April 1 spring game. If you're with us here, make sure to like the video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you doing that. That helps us grow here. And also, if you're listening on the podcast feed, we appreciate you as well. Make sure to leave a 5-star review and check us out at thewolverine.com. We got a new special now. $10 for 4 months of premium access. So take advantage right now. That ends Saturday night. So it is a limited time offer. So take advantage right now. That is our spring ball special. Let's get into it, though, fellas. Jim Harbaugh hits on a few topics. We'll talk about what he said about the NFL and his future, which is just, something that seems like it's going to happen every offseason where you just continually, talk about all of these different things around the program. But we'll start with something on the field with Amorean Walker, who we've talked about. And I was thinking about this. Has there been a sophomore that has been talked about this much that has played this few of snaps in his career? Jim Harbaugh considers him 2 practices into spring, the starter at the cornerback spot opposite of Will Johnson. He, of course, moved over from wide receiver. He called him a unicorn. He said that kind of, length and size at 6'3" with the, ability to change direction really makes him special. And he said, if we're right here, if this is the right move to move him over, then, he could be that unicorn type where the sky's kind of the limit. So, you got your corner for now heading into the 3rd practice of the spring.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think there are calculated motives in everything Jim Harbaugh says, and I don't think for a second that he doesn't believe that. Trust me, I think that he thinks Amorean Walker is a great player, but I do strongly believe, and he said this in his quote, that he thinks that is the best move for his future, not just for this football team. And okay, if you've got next level potential, you at that size, man, to be able to play like that, you could be an NFL guy for a long, long time. And not saying that he couldn't at wide receiver, but they're thinking, okay, if we're right here, and let's be honest, Jim Harbaugh is right more often than he's wrong when he talks about position switches. Remember Mike Sainristil, right? Let's think of a few others, guys. Help me out here that he's made over the years that have really worked out. So,
he had Owen Marishek playing both ways at Stanford.
There you go.
He's had other guys. Richard Sherman, I believe he moved him over to corner.
Yep. Yeah. Right? Against Richard Sherman's wishes. So,
right.
And I'm sure
I'm sure he hates it now with all the money he has. Right?
I still don't think he likes Jim Harbaugh that much, which is crazy. He should be kissing his butt, right? But I think that Amorean Walker, first things first, man, what an unselfish move for this kid. He said he came here, he wanted to score touchdowns. Jim Harbaugh made it perfectly clear, too, that, hey, this is a kid who can play both ways, and that is our vision for him, that this kid could be one of those rare guys who can do both. But as of right now, from what we've heard and what we even heard in the offseason, this is the guy that they are pegging to be that second corner next to Will Johnson. Can you imagine the athleticism at that corner spot with both those guys there? If Amorean Walker's playing there, so you got to find another guy back there. Miles Pollard is a guy I know they're high on, and somebody always emerges. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again: with Steve Klinkscale back there coaching these guys, I am never concerned about the what they're going to put on the field, and that they are as ready as they can be to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is certainly, when you have a guy that comes in and says, well, I'd like to play wide receiver, and the coaches, they look at the traits, they look at the explosiveness, and they say, might be better off at cornerback. I think I mentioned this on the board earlier in the day where, 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers, like, not saying that there's a bevy of them in the NFL, and they're not exactly a dime a dozen, but there are a lot of them. You know what there aren't a lot of? 6'3", 6'4" cornerbacks that can move at the type of, that short area quickness burst. We'll see if the playmaking ability and ball skills are there. But, I pulled it up. You look at some of the guys that have played in the NFL recently. at that height. Yep, Brandon Browner was 6'4", Richard Sherman 6'3", Nnamdi Asama was 6'2", Charles Tillman was 6'2", Antonio Cromartie was 6'2". So, that's not me saying he's going to be one of those type of guys, but Michigan thinks he has that potential. And, if you can get him in the lab and coach him up, and this is, we love the way that they've handled the transfer portal and plugging some of those immediate holes. But at the same time, what I like about a situation like Michigan's second cornerback job is that spring football gives you the opportunity to give these young guys a chance to see what they can do on the field. I mean, you could plug and play a starter and that's fine. And, on this team, when you have championship aspirations, maybe that's even the ideal. We know that they had interest on some of those guys, but, when it becomes apparent that the guys you have are the guys that you're going to roll with, when you have someone with that type of athletic potential, why not just let him have him get after it right now? And again, I don't know that I could sit here and say it's, calculated and they're trying to push him a certain way. But Harbaugh did say, we want to get him in there and master this position. And then we can maybe start having the conversation about playing two ways in fall camp. So, I mean, I love it. I mean, the fact that with Will Johnson, you have a guy where, he's the guy, he's going to completely erase the guy that's across from him. So from there, it becomes a chess match with the other guys in your secondary. And maybe, that second cornerback gets a little bit of safety help over the top. But, if you have a guy that, Amorean Walker talks about wanting to score touchdowns. If you have a guy at cornerback that's athletic and has the instincts and all those types of things, he's going to get himself a few touchdowns, probably turning over the football if all of that comes together. So we'll see what happens. But the hype train on him is not slowing down at all.
You guys both used the word calculated. I thought the same thing. Anthony and I were talking in the parking lot after the press conference, and I said that where it's like you kind of knew when he was a recruit that, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, to his credit too, like he lets guys play the position they want to play and, let them compete wherever they want to compete. Now, I'm sure they tell guys where they maybe have a better chance, which they'd be stupid not to. But I did find it kind of interesting as well. I kind of was thinking the same thing where it's like, yeah, you're already the starter, that sort of thing, because I think they know that he'd be better off at that position. And, it looks like he's open to that. And he was open to doing it last year. He played both. But, all corner this year, I think will really help him hone those skills throughout this, or all corner this spring at the very least, will help him hone those skills as they go in and try to figure out what his role exactly is going to be when they start up fall camp in August. But
think about this: John Jansen and John Runyon both came here wanting to to play a little bit of tight end, and it took a couple weeks or even that, and they're like, okay, and it kind of worked out okay for those guys.
So, yeah, I remember a comment from Ed Warner when he was at Michigan talking about, when they recruited Ryan Hayes, that was a conversation they had about, do you want to play tight end? Do you want to play offensive line? And someone asked how you recruit that. And he says, I tell them the truth. I bring up the salaries of elite offensive linemen and I bring up the salaries of elite tight ends, and the offensive linemen make more money. So, I think that's the nice thing about having the type of operation Michigan does where, you almost have a front office type setup where guys are getting the feedback that they need almost in-house, and they don't mislead guys. They just give them the feedback and have them make their decision from there. And I think that's worked out for them more times than not.
That's a great transition to bring us into what we'll talk about next, which is Jim Harbaugh obviously getting the questions about him having conversations both virtually and in person in Ann Arbor with the Denver Broncos about their head coaching opening. He has those. He also, and basically his answer was, less about him and more about how they get interest from, not just him, but some assistant coaches, other staff members, players that explore that option, which is a great way to kind of, deflect a little bit. And, he basically says that he went on to say that, he'll be here as long as Michigan will have him. Then he elaborated on that a little bit later, talking about how, I'll be here as long as Michigan will have me. Every January, you go through the process of seeing if the athletic director wants you, the fan base wants you, the players want you, that sort of thing. I thought that was really interesting that he kind of went there. And, who knows what exactly it means. But, your guys' takeaway from all that talk with, you have Jim Harbaugh talking about that, but he also brought up how Jesse Minter, who interviewed with the Philadelphia Eagles, and looks like he's a candidate, going through that process for their defensive coordinator job as well. Hey, we welcome it. He said we look at it as a positive. And it is in a lot of ways, but what did you guys take from all that?
You know what? I'm probably reading too much into this, but first of all, he said as long as they want me here, and I think there was part of him, and I'm not speaking for him. This is just my opinion. Prove that you want me here. Do you want me here? Let's see here. Let's be competitive in salaries for my coaches, for me, even if he's not saying him, and he's proven it's not all about him by donating his bonus money in the past to the other coaches in the athletic department, right? But when he said as long as, I almost took it as an if they want me here, so show me, tell me, whatever, after the season, you're our guy. I think that when he talked about Ward Manuel too, I thought that was interesting. We have a good relationship, so on and so forth. But I don't think there's any question, and if they can deny it if they want to, that Santa Ono played a big part in keeping Jim Harbaugh here, and proving that, yeah, you're our guy, and I'm not saying that Ward Manuel didn't, but I really would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during those negotiations. So to me, it means something different. It means, hey, you show me, you tell me you want me here, I'm your guy. You know what? If we're not doing everything that we can to win, then maybe in some ways they're not showing him that. So that's kind of my read on it a little bit. Does this mean that Jim Harbaugh is not going to flirt with the NFL again? I would never say that, as long as you have that itch and you can't predict. Say he wins 3 in a row and he wins a national championship, man, and he feels like he's done everything that he can at Michigan. Is anybody going to really begrudge him going back to the NFL, trying to prove himself there again and win a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. So that's what I took of it, but I thought he handled it extremely well. And he has proven, right, in his support of his coaches, with Jesse Minter being the most recent interviewing with the Eagles, that he is supportive of them and their opportunities. And the players as well have said, we have NFL aspirations. Our coach does too, and so be it.
Yeah, I thought that you could definitely tell we haven't spoken to him since the Fiesta Bowl. So you can definitely tell he's had some time to sit on this and craft what the program response is. But I think it is the right way to play it. The way that they operate, they don't hold anyone back. They encourage people. And I think it's important to them that it's important to Harbaugh that I think it is apparent that at some point, if it all materializes, no man knows the future, all that stuff, right? That they have lineage and I don't know how to put it. They have people in place to step up to the next rung on the ladder. That's why we see these analysts get elevated, and we see someone like Sharon Moore elevated from tight ends coach a few years ago to now, he's your offensive coach and your sole offensive coordinator. So again, I mean, I think at this point it's I'll stop. The chance is there. Like, we've done this 2 off seasons in a row in different ways, but I do think that as long as the goal is what the goals are, to win a national championship, to compete for national championships, and as long as the administration backs him and pays him market value, I think that I'm never going to say he'll never go back, but it's pretty apparent to me. I mean, he glows when he talks about working for this university and working for this program and leading the guys that they have. So I have no doubt he's happy. Just, you can be happy and still pursue another opportunity. It doesn't have to be as binary or as black and white as it has been, but as long as he feels that love, I do think he'll stick around.
Yeah, and he called the program a superhero. He said that when it has attacks coming in, like the negative headlines that he was asked about with all the things that have happened, NCAA allegations, you have the whole Matt Weiss situation, you have, him fielding calls, as he said, calls come in, from NFL teams, things like that. He said that they absorb, the blow like a superhero and then spit it back out in laser fashion. You also have him saying that the program is like a recession-proof housing market. So just some vintage, some Jim Harbaugh isms. He also said Blake Corum will be likely full go in June. Both Drake Nugent and Miles Hinton had offseason surgeries, the 2 Stanford offensive line transfers. So they are not full go yet. We learned earlier in the week, Ladarius Henderson will not yet be with the program until the summer as he finishes up some of his degree stuff. And interesting there, he said he was enrolling early, and his MGO Blue bio says he has a degree at Stanford. So that was kind of comes as a surprise when they released the update this week. Trying to think of other tidbits, but I did want to transition. And Anthony, you had another great segue into, talking about they have the pieces in place here if they have to promote. Well, Jesse Minter is up for the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator job. You would think if he gets an offer there, he would take it. That most guys would do that when you're up for such a high position. You're talking about the team that made the Super Bowl this past year, but it makes you wonder. Timing is a little weird with, the college carousel, and Michigan has experienced this a little bit where it's like, man, you're just behind the 8 ball because of the NFL timeline being different than college. But you do have a guy with defensive coordinator experience in Chris Partridge there. You have a co-defensive coordinator already in Steve Klingscale. You could go from the outside. What do you guys think about Jesse Minter and the DC job and the potential ripple effect that would have on Michigan if he got it?
I'll have to listen to it again, but when Harbaugh brought up Minter, when he talked about I chose to stay, and then he said something like, "There's another example, Minter, he chose to stay too," is the way I took it. So
no,
I'm
he
not
said,
quite sure.
So
okay,
I think
sure?
there he was talking about somebody else that got an offer.
Okay, I didn't hear
on
it.
that one. Yeah,
because I didn't hear that. All I heard was him, and then he was talking about Jesse Minter. So we'll have to go back and listen to it. I don't think Jesse Minter is the front runner for that job. I think he's going to be an NFL defensive coordinator someday, and I do think that is his goal. It's amazing how many people scoff at that. Like when you put it up on a message board, like, why, that's just stupid. I'm like, you know what? If you've got a family, it's a no-brainer. And as much as you love Michigan, for example, the hours are less. You're not recruiting, right? And recruiting is 24/7, fellas. I remember John Beeline telling me that he was up at his cottage one year, and he goes, "What am I going to do? Not text a kid back if he's texting me?" He goes, "I have to text him back. There is never a moment when I am not recruiting." So that's just the way it is. Mike McDonald, when everybody was like, "Well, he's going to be here for," no, he's on loan, but it can work. And we've seen it at all the top programs, guys. Alabama, the turnover on their staff. I'm sure Georgia. Look at any of these successful programs. If you've got coaches that are begging to stay, then you're probably doing something wrong. What you want these guys to have goals as well. So, to me, it's one of those things where Minter gets a phone call and he says, "Yes, I'm going to listen. I'm going to interview." And as somebody else said, you know what? It can only help him down the road if he interviews at other jobs, Anthony.
Well, yeah, and it's the defending NFC champs who were maybe a stop or two away from winning a Super Bowl, and certainly look at that organization's been to a Super Bowl twice in the last 6 or 7 years, so
right.
It has pedigree. It's a good organization, and people don't understand that. I think even with the Harbaugh stuff, with the Minter stuff, whatever it is, Michigan can still be a great place that people like to be, and also you can also acknowledge that the NFL is just something bigger. It's more grandiose. It's less work. It's more money. So for those guys, to take a phone call, I'll never fault them for that. That is, these guys to their core are, football purists and historians of the game and tacticians and competitors first and foremost. And there's no higher level than the NFL to compete in this sport. So, if, like I said, my gut says that Minter probably sticks around, but if he goes, again, you've got guys like Steve Klingscale, Chris Partridge, Mike Elston. Maybe you bring in another name. You probably have to add another name somewhere. We've seen Harbaugh have to do that in the past with Maurice Linguist to Steve Klingscale, which worked out being an upgrade. So again, it's if he goes, that's awesome for him, because if you're a coordinator in the NFL, you're just a step away from being a head coach in the NFL. And, if you're a coordinator at the college level, you're that much further away from, being an NFL head coach. But I think for a lot of these guys that have that background, there's only 32 of those jobs. So for me, I can't sit here and say I'd be surprised. But I do think that, when your program is successful, I like, and it goes back to Harbaugh's comments. I like how they're choosing to word this and use it as a selling point, because that's how you combat the negative recruiting, to me, is to say, hey, we've got calls coming in from all over the place. That's true. But guess what? Yeah. We're still here, and we want to be here, and we want to coach you, and we want to develop you. So for me, that's where I stand on it.
And guess what? You're going to get another guy if he leaves that's going to come in and have the same aspirations, and they're going to want him someday too, because that's what we do here. So, and there are only 32 DC jobs in the NFL too, man. So think about that. That is a prestigious position. So, hey, more power to him.
Yeah, and if Minter leaves, you could shuffle some things around, and you could bring in Vince Marrow if you don't want somebody that's going to get those calls coming in. But
Holy,
it's a good problem to have, and Harbaugh talked about that when he was speaking about the offensive line depth as well. It's a great problem to have. Like these are the issues that you have if you're a team that's gone to the college football playoff the last 2 seasons, and really, you're even a special case on top of that because some of those teams that are in that mix don't have this problem. Someone asked it on the message board the other day. How come nobody's coming after Ohio State's defensive coordinator? And I said, well, because Donovan Edwards is still running, I think, right now. I don't think they've caught him yet, because Michigan's having success and because this is an impressive group of coaches that is out there, on the field for Michigan right now. So it's kind of, we'll see what happens with Jesse Minter. I will say the one downside of being in the NFL is I do think there's a little bit less loyalty there. Guys get fired a lot, and there's a lot of pressure. I mean, early on in the season for the Ravens, people were calling for Mike McDonald. People were saying, well, why did we bring this guy in from their fan base? Now he ended up, their defense got better as the year went on. But, I mean, there was that talk out of the gate in the NFL. So it's a little bit of a different beast, but Jesse Minter's been there, and he knows what it's all about. So not saying he wouldn't be able to handle it, and not saying Mike McDonald can't handle it either. Both great guys. We'll see what happens with Jesse. Let's talk basketball and get out of here. Before we do that, though, we will talk about our friends over at Prize Picks, our sponsor for today's podcast. It's basketball season, and there isn't a better way to enjoy watching your favorite team than by playing daily fantasy with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the simplest form of real money daily fantasy sports and just pits you against the numbers. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Whether you're a fantasy sports nut or a casual fan looking to add some excitement to the games, Prize Picks is the perfect game for you. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and many more. It's the best way to have action on the game in states like Michigan, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada, not Ontario. You simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. So every week I read off that, list all the sports there. So I decided in my picks this week to get crazy with it. And I have 2 picks. One of them is in the world of disc golf. I have Paul McBeth. I've never heard of this guy. More than 54 strokes. So I'm rooting for him to fail, I think. And then cricket, I have Mohammad Rizwan of the Multan Sultans. That's their team name. More than 31 and a half runs. So just to prove it, if anyone was out there doubting that they actually have the stuff for these obscure sports, they do. They got every sport you can imagine. So join them there. But what do you guys have for picks this week?
That's crazy. Those were exactly my 2 out of the blue. No, I'm just kidding this week. You know what? I've got Hunter Dickinson more than 16 and a half points, I believe it was. I saw on there. I think he's going to have a big game tonight. I think he's going to be motivated. And I think Michigan is going to take that game to the wire. It doesn't sound like Jet Howard is going to play. So they're going to need a lot more from him, a lot more scoring. And that's where it comes from. And I like him over more than the 8 rebounds, too, that I see. I think Hunter Dickinson is going to have a double-double with something like 20 and 10 tonight and lead Michigan to a close win or a close loss against Rutgers on the road. That's a well-coached basketball team. They sure know how to defend. But the scoring's got to come from somewhere, guys. And I think they'll double him a little bit. Read your outstanding preview, Clayton, on that. So I feel like I have a sense of which way that's going to go. But I think he's going to hit a couple shots outside, too, and get the 3-ball working, and they're going to step up.
All right, this week, I've been talking about how I've been playing a lot of NHL on these lately. So I'm going to go with New York Rangers goalie Yaroslav Halak with less than 25 and a half saves. I think the Red Wings stay hot, get a win there on Thursday night. And then Hunter Dickinson, I have the more than 16 and a half points for him. Seems like we're kind of overdue for a big Dickinson game. So bringing that big Dickinson energy to the Prize Picks this week. So less than 25 and a half saves for Halak, more than 16.5 points for Hunter Dickinson.
And look at that big Dickinson, $270 for Anthony up there, showing it off a little bit.
I was just
big
about
Dickinson.
to say,
Yeah.
look at that count.
I've been playing this a while, so
You're big Dickinson it. So
not my first rodeo.
Yeah, the BDE lifestyle. You're either BDE or you're not BDE, as Hunter said a couple weeks ago. Apparently, Anthony is. So download the Prize Picks app or visit prizepicks.com. Sign up using the code Wolverine to get an instant 100% bonus up to $100 on your first deposit. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget, that's the Prize Picks app or prizepicks.com. And code Wolverine for that instant bonus. Let's talk about this basketball game. CB, you alluded to it as well. This is a very good defensive Rutgers team that has slipped a little bit in that department lately, and I think that's why they've lost those 3 games. They eke out a win over the weekend at Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin's very good. It is impressive that they were able to do that shorthanded. They didn't have Caleb McConnell. He looks doubtful for tonight's game. They're already without another starter, Mawat Mag, at the power forward spot. So they're shorthanded. Michigan may be shorthanded with Jet Howard, as you talked about as well. Terrence Williams, the second, I would assume he plays. He was a full participant on Tuesday. They said they were waiting to see how he would react to being a full participant. He has that knee contusion, but I think that's going to be big. And Jet Howard could decide this game, or a Joey Baker could decide this game, or the way Doug McDaniel and Kobe Buff can shoot could, decide this game. Because I agree with you. I think we're going to see a lot of help in the post on Hunter Dickinson. I think we're going to see some open shots from the perimeter. I was watching, some clips from that game that they had against Wisconsin, and even Steven Crowell in the post, who's okay as a post-up big guy. He's getting absolutely, so much attention down low. There are like 4 guys within a couple feet of him there. They're going to leave those open. They allow a lot of three-point attempts. Rutgers is 1 in 6 when teams shoot 40% or more on 3. So it's kind of like, hey, we're going to give you those looks. If you make them, you're probably going to go in there and win. If you don't make them, you're probably going to go in there and lose. What else do you guys see in this matchup?
I think Doug McDaniel's going to get some looks, and he's going to have to knock those down. Yeah. So I think you're going to see Kobe Buffkin get some added attention too. Again, Pikel's no dummy, right? You concentrate on the guys who can score. It's going to be somebody like Joey Baker, Doug McDaniel, who's going to have to step up and hit some of those shots. And again, I think Hunter Dickinson too, stepping out, and he relishes that role, as we know. We'll see if he brings a ski mask tonight to Rutgers, and they try to steal a win. At the Jersey Mike's Center, is that what it's called? Jersey Mike's Arena.
Jersey Mike's Arena, yeah.
Right.
The Rack that's a better name, the Rack. But
it is a better name.
But money talks, I guess. So.
Money talks, man. So I wouldn't mind seeing Terrence Williams knock one down early too, because he usually plays better when he hits an early shot. So let's see how it plays out. But I think you're absolutely right. Again, Pikel's a great coach. It's gonna be a low-scoring, ugly game, fellas. So buckle up and prepare to fall asleep at times and maybe doze off. It's an 8:30 start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So there we are. But it'll be interesting. Michigan needs this one. I expect them to play really hard, and I expect them to play well defensively and get some looks offensively. We'll see if they knock down shots.
Yeah, for me, it's you bring your defense. If your defense travels, if you can play good defense, I think you're going to give yourself a chance in this game. Going to have to hit some tough shots. This is one of those games where, to me, it's like the first team to 65 is probably the team that wins this one. I expect one of those good old-fashioned Big Ten rock fights. It's going to be a game where I think, a lot of these games this year, Michigan's won where their freshmen and young guys have played well and then lost when they haven't. So Doug McDaniel is huge in this game. Terrace Reed is huge in a game like this. I think Will Cheddar will be critical. Even if Terrence Williams comes back, you need some good minutes out of the Cheddar man. So we'll see. It's about the guard play too. The guards play well. Michigan's a tough out on any night, but on those nights where those guys are, don't have their best, and Hunter Dickinson is, 5 for 16 from the floor and missing some of those bunnies around the basket, it's going to be tough to win. So for me, we have to take things game to game with this team right now. Obviously need this one for the next one to matter. Need the next one for the one after it to matter, et cetera, et cetera. But I like, and this was something that was not jarring, but when Phil Martelli said it when we talked to him yesterday, I think I just kind of like mentally where this team is at, coming off of a close game that you finally found a way to not only win, but sort of win going away by the time that game was over. So I think they're in a good spot right now with them. I mean, again, they are what their record says they are. A few more times than not, they've come out and found a way to win games, but they still have a lot of work to do. And we're going to see. I mean, a game like last Saturday was absolute slam dunk must win, have to have it to even be in the conversation. This is another one of those games where if you find a way to win it, all of a sudden that door, you win tonight, you find a way to win on Sunday. All of a sudden you're looking at a situation where if you just split one of those last two games, grab a game in Indy, all of a sudden Selection Sunday might be something that gets eyeballs from folks in Ann Arbor. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Phil Martelli was talking about the mentality of this team, as you mentioned, 1-0. That's kind of their mentality is the next game. And they understand, though, the stakes, and they understand you can only take it one game at a time. And I was listening to Hunter Dickinson's podcast, Roundball, because I'm trying to be a, BDE is possible. I'm trying to, become a big Dickinson energy guy. And, he was saying that he hopes that the young guys get confidence from what they did down the stretch in that Michigan State game because they've had so many of those close losses where they didn't execute, but now they know what it takes. Now they know the kind of discipline that it takes. And, he hopes that it carries over for the rest of the team. Maybe it will be a confidence booster when they get in a tight game. This team's been a little different on the road, like so many other Big Ten teams, though. So it's tough. And Rutgers is only allowing opponents to shoot, I think, 45% on twos and 30% on threes at home. So that defense gets ratcheted up even more. Same time, Nebraska went in there and made everything last week. So you never know what can happen. And then you mentioned the defense, just this is going to be interesting from a backcourt perspective, who Michigan puts on who, because you have a 5'11" point guard in Doug McDaniel, potentially guarding a 6'7" point guard in Paul Mulcahy. You probably put him on Cam Spencer, but he's a fantastic shooter that hit 6 threes, and his first 5 against Wisconsin can change a game. And Doug's been a little not so great off the ball on defense, running around with guys. So you got to be locked in for 40. There's no excuse in this game. I mean, the season comes down to this, and there's no time to fall asleep on defense. And I know there are a couple of guys that have done that a lot this year. So it's that sort of thing. And Kobe Buffkin's got to be good on Mulcahy. But anything else on hoops before we head out of here, fellas?
I don't think so. Let's get it tonight, man. I really don't want to cover an NIT. Would love to cover an NCAA tournament. This is another step in the right direction. There's nothing like March Madness, man. I love football season. March Madness is right there with it for me. So, and of course, we've got Michigan hockey too to root for in the postseason. So maybe we'll take a road trip down to Tampa. But get it done tonight, fellas, so we can make our trip. Like I told Clay, we're packing for 4 days for the Big Ten tournament as well. I think this of any year is a year where we could see it a seed, a 9, or even a 10, 1 through 10, win this thing somehow. There's not one team that really stands out and you say, okay, they're going to be really, really tough to beat.
Just give yourselves a chance.
Yeah.
Give us a chance to have a show Monday night where we say,
do it for us. Do it for us.
Yeah, specifically for us.
Exactly.
It'd be great to do. I mean, to sit there, they're at 15-12 right now. If you could come out of this weekend and we're sitting doing a live show Monday night going, they got 17 wins, 2 regular season games left, whatever you get in the Big Ten tournament, they have a chance here. That's all at this point, that would be I'm not expecting them to play themselves out of the bubble because I think we're kind of just a little too late for that. It's going to take a lot of good basketball that with them being as young as they are, I just don't know if that consistency is there yet, but I'd love to just have a chance because I love filling out my brackets on Selection Sunday. And I love talking myself into going, this team went 19-15, but I like this draw. I'm put them in the Final Four. So I love doing that type of stuff. So, we'll see what happens. It's all fluid still, but go win a basketball game tonight and then worry about the one on Sunday.
Yeah. Speaking of Sunday, senior day against Wisconsin, Michigan's going to honor Joey Baker, who's, between him and Jalen Llewellyn, the only 2 seniors on this team. So a little bit odd there because you don't have these guys that you're saying goodbye to for, that were here for 4 or 5 years like you had last year with Eli Brooks and guys like that. And they're going to honor the team managers, but they will not honor Jalen Llewellyn as of yesterday. Kind of indicates that you would think he's probably going to come back. They don't have a scholarship yet, but you're always going to get attrition. What'd you guys make of that?
Yeah, I agree, and I like it. Doug McDaniel's the starting point guard on this team next year, but for depth and a guy who can come in and make some shots off the ball, I think Llewellyn can do that. I think he'll do it better than he did. Devontae Jones, it took him a while to heat up last year, but he did. And give him credit. They didn't win that Ohio State game without him, and they don't make the NCAA tournament without him heating up. So you can say whatever you want, folks, but he was not a net negative on that team, especially in the second half of the season. I think that would be the similar path that I would expect from Jalen Llewellyn, because contrary to what the message board geniuses say, Juwan Howard has developed a lot of talent here in Ann Arbor. We've seen it with Kobe Buffkin. We've seen it with several different players, guys, and I think you would see the same thing with Jalen Llewellyn.
Be great to just see some consistency in terms of your roster year to year. Again, who knows no man knows the future when it comes to the NBA guys. And I suspect Dickinson will be back next year, but yeah, I mean, again, that's why for me, if this roster is more or less going to kind of look the same, I'm just looking for things to build on, because I think next year's team has a chance to be really good. So Joey Baker has been, I think he's more or less just kind of been what we thought he would bring to this team. It's been some much needed shot making at times. I'm not going to sit here and say he's the second coming of Duncan Robinson, but they needed a guy that could come off the bench and hit shots. And I think while he's been a bit inconsistent, he's been just what the doctor ordered. So good year for him. And hopefully he gets to play some postseason basketball.
For sure. He's been exactly what you needed. He's made over a 3 a game. He's 6th in the Big Ten, 3-point field goal percentage. I agree with both you guys. I think Jalen Llewellyn, getting him back would be nice for guard depth, something they haven't really had much of under Juwan Howard. And he can play off the ball. He can play back there with Doug McDaniel, who I agree. I think he's going to win the starting point guard job after being thrown in the fire this year. And, that would really help. Never know what's going to happen with Kobe Buffkin. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he and Jet Howard are at the combine testing out their, I wouldn't blame him either. So, you kind of want that continuity, as you said, AB. You look back at that Tennessee game last year, the guys that made plays in that game, it was Hunter Dickinson, Terrence Williams, really the only 2 guys that came back. Like, so much turnover. And if you can avoid some of that, I think it'd be big. But that is going to do it for our show this week. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody. Make sure to like this video on YouTube. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. And check us out at thewolverine.com. We got that spring ball special going only until Saturday night. So limited time offer, $10 gets you 4 months of premium access over at thewolverine.com. Join our message board. Get all of our premium articles. So go and do that right now, and we'll see you next time.